Hey everyone, my name is Dr. Mortimer Bodyworth, and today I'm going to show you how you can create an altruistic legacy at every stage of your life. And yes, I'm talking about your corpse. I promise it's going to make sense at the end. So first, just a bit about me. Like I said, I'm Dr. Mortimer Bodyworth. I'm a general practitioner working across Western Canada, and I actually graduated from the University of Alberta. So I was literally in your position not so long ago. Outside of my clinical work, I'm really involved in philanthropy. I donate to a number of causes, and the one closest to me is a nonprofit I run called Cadaver & Co. And that's what I'm here to talk to you guys about today. At Cadaver & Co., our mission is simple. We help people create a legacy of care by empowering future doctors to give back to medicine even after life. And since you're all entering your final year of medical school, future doctors, we wanted to come talk to people like you who already care about helping others. Also, as a thank you to your commitment to the medical field, my team and I have provided each of you with complimentary snacks. A couple assistants will be handing them out shortly. And while you do that, just please, I'd really appreciate if you all filled out this quick Google form with this QR code on the screen, which is a quick attendance and declaration of your own personal goals. We just do this at every presentation just for some housekeeping stuff, not too much to worry about. So let's get into the weeds of things. The current problem our company is looking to address is the increasing shortage of body donors across the globe. These cadavers are crucial for medical education, surgical training, and scientific research. So the solution we've come to is dependent on donors like you, people who care about the well-being of others. And this works because as med students, you guys already understand the necessity of helping others, and you understand how crucial cadavers are in education and research. I'm sure you've interacted with them during your studies, or at least read of some of the success stories surrounding cadaver research. So because of how much they benefited your education, and even mine once upon a time, it was 10 years ago that I was in school, I'm sure you wouldn't mind paying the favor of the donors that come before you and passing on that same reciprocity to future generations of students and researchers, especially considering this donation has no real impact or effect on your corporeal being, no real world impact on your day-to-day life. This won't hurt you currently. So I'd like to ask, who's willing to be a donor right now? Any takers? That's just a joke, obviously. I'm sure that's a quick decision to make and probably not one that anyone wants to make. A lot of life left to live. But that's totally fair. Just stay with me. I have something else that you can do that will be just as helpful. Let's just quickly go over some testimonials from students a couple years ago and across my time doing presentations who have also ultimately decided to become donors. Dr. Barry DeEvidence says many people who want to save lives never take this step despite it being the most direct way to contribute. Wow, what a way to stick to your convictions, Dr. Evidence. Dr. Donor McBody says, I'm a good person, so it's only right that I donate my corpse after I die. Wow, what a way to stay consistent with your values. Dr. Candy Chu says, when I was studying, the use of cadavers was crucial to my learning. It's only right that I repay that. Now that's reciprocity, guys. And finally, Dr. Dippy Fresh says, I already committed to the idea of corpse maxing. Might as well follow through. Eloquently said, Dippy. Now that's how you commit to a good deed and prove the type of person you are. Well, I hope these testimonials really ingrain the positives that this company can represent for our donors and the future of success and thriving scientific research that comes out of it. Now, finally, it's on to you guys. I've given my quick little speech on how we can improve things, and I'm asking you just to help us out a little bit. If you're looking to contribute and this presentation has given you a new perspective on what it means to be an altruistic doctor, just scan this QR code and sign our waiver to become a full body donor. Hey, and even if you aren't just ready to contribute, still scan the QR code. We'll also sign you up for our newsletter, which shares success stories and cadaver research and related stories. Please do that because that newsletter is really what keeps this company going so we can continue to give presentations like this. And finally, I want you all to recall the pledge to uphold medical values that we had earlier in the first Google form. Are we all contributing to the best of our abilities? Can we all do more? That's all, guys. Have a great rest of your day, and thanks for listening. This presentation combines multiple persuasion foundations to convince this cohort of med students to become body donors after they die. The first slide doesn't do much, it simply introduces the topic about to be presented. The second slide introduces the presenter, or in other words, it introduces us to the persuader. On first glance, this may not seem consequential in persuasion, but this introduction enhances the effectiveness of the later persuasive techniques in the presentation. By explaining that he's a practicing doctor with a decade of experience, Dr. Bodyworth establishes himself as an authority figure with expertise in this topic, which would work extremely well for establishing himself within a group of future doctors who aspire to be in his position one day. Secondly, by stating that he attended their school during his years of schooling, he establishes himself a sense of similarity with his audience. Also, to further bolster his credibility, he mentions his philanthropic work in an attempt to endear himself to his audience. People like people who do good things, so the idea is to make the audience like him. In all, this short segment enhances the speaker's credibility before he attempts to convince the audience by establishing a level of authority, expertise over the subject, similarity between the audience, and overall a general sense of liking. The attempt to persuade begins in slide 3 using two distinct techniques. First of all, the persuader uses pre-given reciprocity to prime the listener into a future request. By simply giving the audience a treat before asking them to do anything significant, Dr. Bodysworth leverages the normal reciprocity and the social obligation to return a gift, creating a psychological sense of reciprocity in which a debt must be repaid eventually. This technique is also the most useful when done by a pleasant confederate, as established by a study done by Reagan in 1971. This pleasantness was established in the previous part of the presentation. Secondly, as they're enjoying the pre-given gift, the foot in the door commitment technique is used, where listeners are asked to complete a simple attendance task that doesn't entail a larger commitment to prime them for a larger task later in their presentation. This is rooted in the psychological need for consistency, in which individuals are compelled to align their actions with prior commitments. Furthermore, the Google form embedded in the QR code also serve a persuasive function. The first form attempts to make the listeners establish themselves as an individual who cares about people and will do everything in their power to help others, which establishes their attitude towards the subject so that the persuader can then tie this attitude to the mission presented by his company, Cadaver & Co. The fourth slide presents more persuasive attempts that draw on multiple concepts. First, it establishes the importance of the work to frame it as a subject to care about. Secondly, it ties the solution of volunteering to be a body donor as a reflection of oneself. By depicting donors as those who care about others' well-being, Persuader prompts the audience of med students who are meant to care about others to consider what they should do in this situation to be consistent with their values. This technique follows the principle of the ABCs, or the attitude behavior consistencies, where it first activates existing attitudes by mentioning you understand the necessity of helping others and how crucial cadavers are, and secondly, links this attitude to a specific behavior by saying if you value helping others and cadavers help your education, then donating is a way to live out that belief. This situation also ties into the criteria discussed in class that make attitude behavior consistencies stronger. Of the six discussed in class, the first used here is that an attitude is central to the belief system, which is in this situation the benevolence of medical practitioners. And then secondly, the attitude has multiple act criterias, and this is going to be more apparent towards the end of the presentation when signing up for the newsletter. This also uses cognitive dissonance theory, a psychological theory stating that people experience discomfort when their beliefs and actions do not align. It creates a gap between the belief that as a med student and future doctor, they should do good things and their current behavior of not being a donor that is currently also being depicted as the right thing to do. Cognitive dissonance theory explains the discomfort, while the ABCs explain predictive alignment. Students who aren't donors may feel discomfort when presented with the idea that being altruistic means becoming a donor. To alleviate this discomfort and remain psychologically consistent, they may be compelled to donate. And finally, in the last part of this segment, the persuader jokingly asks if anyone wants to become a donor right now. This not only adds a layer of fun to the presentation, but it also works as a reciprocal concession when he concedes and says he has something simpler for someone to do, thereby retreating from the initial position, which primes the audience member to match his concession to his far simpler request. Even though this part was played for laughs, it is crucial for further persuading the audience. The fifth slide doesn't use any new concepts tied to reciprocity and or commitment consistency, but instead attempts to solidify previously stated points using social proof. By showcasing testimonials from individuals who were once in their position and are now in occupations they aspire to be in, it activates a psychological phenomenon of social proof where people emulate the actions of others to reflect correct behavior. The final slide calls the audience to action with a QR code and ties the presentation together. It also represents the theory of planned behavior, where one, positive attitudes toward donations were strengthened throughout the presentation and reiterated when being a donor was compared to being an altruistic doctor. And then two, it was reinforcing social expectations among future doctors by showing what's seemingly normal amongst doctors in the previous slide. And then finally, this theory is relevant because the persuader bolsters the listener's perceived behavioral control through a simple QR code, which increases the intention to act. And amongst that final implementation, this last slide wraps up other methods of persuasion set up earlier by one, giving an avenue for reciprocity from the previous gift by simply signing up for the newsletter, as that's a simple task that allows the company to function, which also allows a pathway for continued communication and convincing about being a donor. Secondly, by priming them with the foot in the door commitment, where they have already committed to a less important form, they may as well stay committed and fill out the second form afterwards. Third, the earlier reciprocal concession made in jest can now be paid off simply by becoming a future doctor and or joining the newsletter instead of donating your body immediately today. And most importantly, solidifying the audience's need to be consistent with their own attitudes by doing what is presented as altruistic and what a doctor would do. Solidified in one last call to action where the presenter says, are we all contributing to the best of our abilities? Which leaves the listener thinking, how can they be consistent with convictions while simultaneously giving them an easier pathway to fix any discomfort caused by that question?